what was the difficulty? Why South Africa seemed like a pretty great place? Why didn't you stay there?
It would be an easier path to citizenship.
What pathway did you guys specifically take to get there?
So the rules have changed quite a bit.
What other pathways can people look at that might not be specifically that if someone doesn't want to study?
Because most of these agents, some of them also don't know as much as you will know if you do the research.
Would you say that the Trump effect is making Canada a lot more immigrant unfriendly?
Or you're just afraid to tell anyone where you're actually from? We did use an agent, but I would not recommend this agent.
Hi guys, welcome to Warm Takes with Blaze, where we have opinions about the world that we are not willing to stake our lives on. So we don't have hot takes, we have warm takes. Today, I have a good friend of mine again. His name is Tawana. He is in Canada right now, and he's been there now for about a year and a half, and he's going to give us his view about his process getting to Canada and what that's been like for him. And perhaps the hope is that with what he says, maybe you can. I know a lot of people are deciding whether or not to immigrate to Canada or not, and hopefully, with what he says, it can give you some insight. So, welcome, Tawana. Welcome to the pod. So, really, what's your take about immigrating to Canada? What's your take about that?
Hey, thank you, Blaze. So, my take is that it's fairly doable to immigrate to Canada. Obviously, the challenges do come when trying to make it permanent. So, and also, I have to say that like sometimes these things are cycles. So maybe we're in the cycle where actually making anything permanent in Canada is very difficult. If you're looking at like the whole Trump stuff has escalated that to even greater heights than
Making it
before.
even more difficult.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we'll get into all that, but I think we should say firstly, before we say more, we're not immigration consultants. The whole purpose of this video is for entertainment purposes only. Okay.
Absolutely.
We're just telling you he just wants to tell us his experience about doing it. And what that's been like for him. So I think maybe let's start with some background. Tell us a bit about yourself, where you're originally from, and maybe tell us about your journey to getting to Canada.
Yeah, so obviously I'm originally from Zimbabwe and moved to South Africa like in 2009. And stayed there up until a year and a half ago. And it was great and really grew a lot there.
So what was the difficulty? Why South Africa seems like a pretty great place? Why didn't you stay there?
My wife wanted to just upgrade on her qualifications, and Canada seemed to be like a very nice place to do it at. And we did find some good fields for her to actually study in. And she's been enjoying it for a year and a half now, and she's almost done. So that's the reason why we moved to Canada. But while doing all of that, obviously we got blessed with a child, and we've got a little Canadian baby, and so that's the journey. Yeah.
Okay, that's very cool. So why Canada? The world is pretty large. I'm speaking to you from the other side of the planet, pretty much. Why Canada?
Yeah. So with our limited research, we just found Canada to be more open to what we actually wanted to do. And obviously, being immigrants, you always have to, pick your countries very carefully knowing the hostility that comes with it. So Canada seemed like a very nice place to do that at, and obviously the scenario doesn't hurt. You know, the environment and the amazing scenic areas here. So yeah,
Okay.
we did have a couple of countries though before Canada. We did look at New Zealand,
Mm.
Ireland, but for
Why
some
didn't
weird
those work
reason we
out?
just yeah. So we looking at those other countries. We looked at like some I don't know how best to break that down. Maybe
Mm,
we just ran with the thought of what ifs
mm,
and
mm,
some
mm.
statistical thinking over
Okay.
there, and we found out
Yeah.
that actually, like, if you hypothetically speaking, if you stayed in Canada and you did make your stay permanent, it would be an easier path to citizenship than in any
Than the
other
other
country.
places.
So, exactly. So, we just thought,
Mm,
nah, this is probably the best. So,
your best option.
hypothetically, if exactly, if anything
Yep.
changed, this would be the best day. Yeah.
Sure. So you said when you were looking at the country from a distance, it seemed like it was nice, the scenic, all that, all that. Has the your good impression of the country stayed? As in, when you arrived, was your expectation met? And what things did you not expect that were probably not as good as you thought they would be?
That's a good question. Actually, like all expectations have been met except for a
Okay.
few because currently, right now, we live in a relatively small town that's 4 hours away from Vancouver on the west side, and
Mm,
this town, if comparing it to where we came from, which is Johannesburg,
mm,
it's relatively a little bit slow and not
mm,
as advanced, so to speak, than Johannesburg. So you would start to think, wait, is
mhm,
Africa more developed than you know what I mean? But then looking at our situation, we're definitely not. Comparing apples with apples, it's apples with oranges. But for a small town in South Africa versus a small town in Canada, I think this would be a better stay. And
yeah.
if we had to compare Vancouver and Johannesburg, I think Vancouver would also be a better stay because we did manage to visit it. And obviously, when you arrive in Canada, that would be your first stop. So Vancouver is pretty up there. And yeah,
Mhm.
so expectations were met. It's just obviously where we physically stay, it doesn't match up to just staying in
The big
Joburg
city
and
life that
having
you had
all the
before.
options. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about your specific situation. So, you guys, you went to South Africa, you married your wife, you guys then moved to Vancouver. What pathway did you guys specifically take to get there? And then perhaps we can talk about. Of course, it's not the only pathway. We can talk about other pathways people can potentially investigate. But what pathway did you guys specifically take to get there?
Just to correct you over there, it's not, we're not in Vancouver, but we are in a town called Kelowna, which is 4 hours
Sorry,
away.
sorry,
So the
you are
pathway,
right. You're right. You're
so the pathway that we took is it's basically the student pathway.
right.
And back in the day, which is weird because it's just a year ago where this was actually possible. When you were a student, you could actually manage to get your spouse a spousal work permit, which is what I'm on. So basically, you apply for your student visa with a college or university, and once you get it, you can just apply for your spouse as well, which is what we did. So that's the pathway of how we actually managed to
So is
get
that
here
is
in
that no longer
Canada.
the case?
So the rules have changed quite a bit.
Mm.
I don't want to say I the details are a bit
A bit
blurry right
unsure.
now, but yeah, exactly. But from what I understand is that if you apply for a study permit, you have to make sure that it's in certain fields. That's one. You also need
Mm.
to make sure that it's, I think, if it has to be a postgraduate, this is
Mm.
the blurry part. Yeah. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
you can be able to add your spouse onto it. Otherwise, if it's just a study permit, only you can come as a study permit holder. Yeah.
Okay. So in essence,
Yeah.
you can study whatever you want, but there are only specific fields where you can bring dependents
Your
on
spouse.
with your
Absolutely.
spouse
Yeah.
and children. Okay.
Yeah.
So so the for yourself, I'm sure this is the pathway that worked the best for you, right?
Yes.
Um, from your knowledge, of course, it might not be perfect knowledge. What other pathways can people look at that might not be specifically that? If someone doesn't want to study, what are other pathways that they can come to Canada with?
I mean, the main one is basically something called express entry. So express entry is it's a it's a pseudo lottery, but it's not. It's basically a point system where you gather a lot of points, and then when you've gotten enough points, they do a draw. Obviously, this draw is just a number based. They just give you like this is the cutoff number of the invitations we're gonna give for this permanent residency. So that's what the
Mm.
express entry is, and basically what happens is that if you have high points, you're ultimately going to get an invitation. And then when you get
Yeah.
an invitation, what happens is that you will be given a permanent residency. And
Mm.
upon entry into Canada, you actually get a permanent residency card, and then you get to enjoy
Okay.
the benefits of being permanent. But if you're looking at the temporary route, which is what we did, obviously the study permit is there, and then there's also the work route, which is a work
Mm.
permit where you look for jobs on LinkedIn or Indeed or all the other Canadian companies that hire. And then
Mm.
basically what they do is that they sponsor you with the work permit, and then you can come here with your family. So those are
Mm.
the most known routes. And then there's
Sure.
something called like pilot programs. So these are
Mm.
specific to certain sectors, like for example, the health sector, the what else? Health, trades. There are
Mm.
quite a number of them where they're actually looking for a shortage of skills. And
Yep. Yep.
I think also that it involves with you getting a job in that field, and then basically you get permanent residency from that pilot program. So there are a number of ways, but
Mm.
we are in sort of a crunch with the whole Trump issue that they're
Mm.
cutting down these routes. So you now have certain limited ones. But obviously, like when you get to a place like this where a country has limited routes for entry, you
Mm.
start to the best thing to do in this time is to actually start preparing for the time when
They
the
open up.
floodgates actually open up. Yeah, so I wouldn't
Mm.
say just write off Canada as a whole, but I would say just start planning, because for us, when we look at what we did back then, we actually like it took us a year, I think, because you and I were speaking about this, right? At the time, it took us a year
Yeah.
to actually just
Yeah.
do our research. So you can take this time to actually do your research, and then by the time when they open the pathways a little bit, you should be able to pick one and run with it immediately. Yeah.
Okay. You spoke a lot about the different pathways.
Yeah,
I would advise that people, take your time, look at different
absolutely.
resources that you can
Yeah,
find this information in. What is the
yeah.
best way to get information? Should they read on a website, or should they find a consultant to walk them through it? What do you think is the best way to get information?
So, what we did is obviously you pinpoint the main area of where you get all your information, which is canada.ca. So, this is
Okay.
where all the information sits. But it is quite a big library as a website, and you will, I mean, if it's your first time, you will get lost in the source. So, what we did, I remember when we spoke, Blasio, it's that we actually started like watching YouTube channels
Mm,
and just watching pathways, because there are multiple videos of people saying, "Hey, these are 10 ways to get to Canada." Blah, and they list them down. So you look at those, and they give you like all the pointers on how to do it, or what is needed, and then you can
mm,
go back to the canada.ca website and you start looking for what they're saying, just to make sure that what
confirm.
they're saying is correct. So that's what
Mm,
we did. And also, when you're in YouTube, you want to maybe get the latest videos. You don't want to get ones from like back in the day, because obviously the law has
no,
actually
that's
the law
true.
changes quite a lot. So you want to have like the latest information. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's basically where we started. And then obviously also you can speak to immigration agents.
consultants. Mm.
Yeah, but that would be like the last thing you would do. Yeah, but
Why would you say that?
yeah, I would say that because with immigration agents, it does get to a point where you can get overwhelmed depending on what who your agent, the agent that you're speaking to, because you will get what, like for example, you can get an agent who is genuine with what they're saying, and then they'll tell you the truth about the whole process. But
Mm,
in our experience, most of the agents that we spoke to, they always start off with a fear, right? A
mm.
fear, and then basically it's like
A
a
fear
it's
of
like a
what?
marketing cycle. It's like a
A
fear of oh, if you do this, rejection, and then they'll say, but you're lucky that you're with me, because I have gotten quite a number
mm,
of acceptances. So if
I'm the
you go with
savior.
me, exactly. So so that's the journey that they do with agents. So you wanna go to an agent when you've got all your I's dotted. You
Information.
know what I mean? Like when you've got
Mm,
all your stuff together, because otherwise it will be really like disheartening if you don't know, because most of these agents, some of them also don't know as much as
mm.
you will know if you do the research. Yeah,
When you're saying that, I'm remembering my own agent tell me about how, yeah, I've got so many families I've helped to get in,
yeah,
I'm the
exactly.
person. So
Exactly.
you spoke a bit
Yeah,
about the Trump effect,
yeah.
and how it's affecting Canada. Would you say that the Trump effect is making Canada a lot more immigrant unfriendly than it was before?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's happening now is that obviously with the Trump effect, there's a rise in nationalism,
Mm,
and when anytime when you get a rise in nationalism, you start getting people looking at you like, are you meant to be here, or are you not meant to be here? You know what I mean? And this is not just for Canada. It's just across the board. I I specifically like it's almost to the point of PTSD of me
mm,
experiencing this in South Africa, where the
mm.
nationalism is it's thick, it's to the point where you're just afraid to even go to the mall, because or you're just afraid to tell anyone where you're
Where you
actually from. Exactly. Because
have you?
you have fear of that nationalism. But in Canada, that's not the case. Eh?
Okay.
It's mostly on your socials. Obviously, you will get that type of
Mm,
nationalism, but in person, everyone is open, everyone is friendly. You will actually highly likely to meet more immigrants than you are to meet like actual Canadians who've been here for like 100 years or
mm,
something like that. Yeah, most people here are immigrants, which is one of the reasons why we picked it, because like if you are trying to tell me to leave a country, why are you here? You know what I mean? So yeah.
mm,
So
mm,
anyway,
mm.
that's the
So are you
simple term.
saying are you saying from okay? Because here's the truth.
Yeah.
Because of our features, picking us out as not being naturally from Canada is quite easy. Are you saying that you haven't experienced anything like that, where you feel like someone is being prejudiced towards you because you're not from there? That hasn't happened to you.
No, that has not happened. In Canada, it's really open. Like, yeah, it's just a. I don't know how to explain it, because it will start looking like I'm speaking of a utopia,
Utopia.
or you know what I mean, or I'm speaking of a fairyland. There's definitely
Mm,
nothing like that. But I do distinctly remember feeling that in South Africa. So just to
mm, mm,
give the example that if you have stayed in South Africa and you've experienced that, then the chances of you staying in Canada and experiencing that are pretty slim. I'm not going to say they are zero, because I don't
mm.
know, but from where I stay, no, that's not the case at all. Yeah,
That's very cool. Okay,
yeah,
let's come back to your process, the process that you had. So you guys went there on study. Your
yeah,
wife is studying. You are working based
yeah.
on her study. Was that what about that process was the most difficult? Do you think?
I think it's just the processing time, to be fair. Everything else is just
Wow.
straightforward. Yeah, you have to get your documents, make sure that your documents are together. And then what we did it online. And we did, I have to say, we did use an agent, but I would
Mm.
not recommend this agent if anyone was to ever ask. Like, yeah. But
So you would not recommend the agent or agents in
yeah,
general?
I would not recommend their agent. I don't know about
Okay.
other agents, but to be fair, the process was really straightforward.
Mm,
We just did it because it was such a big decision. So we
mm,
didn't want it to fail, and we had all our our investments in it. So that's why we
mm.
decided, you know what, let's just have a second opinion on this, and
Yeah.
get some direction on it. But yeah,
Mm,
I mean, if you don't have that much leverage, then you don't have to use an agent. You can just do it straight. Everything is pretty straightforward. Canada.ca, they break
mm,
it down. They even made it easier than before. They have check boxes now, so the steps are
mm.
pretty straightforward. Yeah.
So I also in the process of immigrating quite recently, and I think for difficulty, depending on the location, it's either with whether it's difficulty with the requirements, like the requirements are too
Yeah.
steep, or
Yeah.
it's either very expensive to do it,
Yeah.
or the process time is just very long.
Long.
Would you
Absolutely.
say
Yeah.
would you say that of these three, the was did the doc was the requirements are they steep? Was it expensive to do? And you already said the waiting time was quite long. So what about the other two?
So the other two, I would say, I'm just trying to, depending on your finances.
Mm,
The other two, I would say they are a bit hard if you financially are not
mm,
stable. You know what I mean? Like, for example, if you're maybe a 20 something year old and you don't have money in the bank, it would obviously be hard financially if you don't like have a parent that can actually show that they've got funds to support you and the
Yeah.
works. So that would make it hard. But if you do have the finances, then that part is somewhat simpler. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for us, it was somewhat simple because we could show that we had some funds. Not saying that we're
You're
rich or
rich, rich.
anything, exactly, but we had enough funds to show that, like, yeah, we're capable of
Mm,
being able to pay all the fees and finish off. And obviously, uh, as a spouse, I was able to prove that I can actually work for the fees, which actually added to
mm,
the
mm.
the possibility of it being feasible. So yeah.
In terms of the documentation, what would you say was the hardest document to get for you?
To be fair, most of them are like, I think the police clearance.
Just getting it from
Yeah,
Zim was a problem.
I actually didn't have to get one from Zim, the South
Oh, because
African
you've
one.
been in South Africa for a
Exactly.
long
Yeah,
time.
exactly. Yeah. So
Mm.
it's the police clear. I think the police clearance was the hardest. I think all the
Because
other
of the time
documents.
taken, or
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it was 3 months out. I
mm,
think
mm,
roughly, if you wanna grab one of those, maybe it's easier now, but back then you had to wait quite a while. And when that
mm.
text comes in to say, "Hey, you can come fetch your police clearance," yeah, it was just
So,
another feeling.
so,
So
so let me ask you a question for someone who might be considering doing this. Like,
yeah,
they have the funds in place, they've got the documents in place, they
yeah.
don't mind waiting the time. Would you recommend Canada as somewhere to come to study, or do you think just now that you're there and you've had time to actually look around at other locations that
Yeah.
potentially there might be better places to go?
That's a very good question. So, if we had to take this time, maybe this year, let's say 2025, if I had to say, will it be easier for you to just make this permanent? Canada
Yeah.
would be a second to maybe something like New Zealand,
Mm,
but it's a very good second, because
mm,
most of the stuff that you'll need are definitely here. It's just
mm,
the part of making it permanent that is going to be hard in 2025. But who knows what 2026 has to hold? Who knows what 2027 has to hold? So maybe it might be a number one again because of
mm.
the tides of the whole political scene. But
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
what I can see, though, when you look at history, these things do tend to cycle out.
They
It gets
change.
hard and then it changes. Like, for example, during COVID, it was the easiest time to make your stay
Mm,
here permanent because obviously the borders were closed. And it
mm,
was still the same after COVID because obviously they had to get the numbers, the pre COVID numbers up. And then they probably, that's what, as if you read in the newspapers and stuff, they say that they overdid it. So they're trying to correct it now.
mm.
So maybe the correction just takes a year or two. And by the time when you're ready to come here, we're back to pre-COVID numbers where you can come back and the permanency is actually easier. So that's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's just a cycle where you start to understand that maybe this is the tough time where you just need to like sit
Wait
back
out the
and
storm.
yeah, exactly, and ride it out. But currently, I would say somewhere like New Zealand would be the best. Back in the day, I would have probably said Ireland or the UK, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's also
It's
looking
closing up
pretty.
again.
Yeah,
Mm,
that's
mm,
looking really tough. So I would say New Zealand would be the best. Yeah,
Okay, so you've been there now a year and a half. You've
yeah,
experienced Canadian life from a first hand. I'm sure if I ask you
yeah.
to list the list of reasons why Canada is better than Zimbabwe or South Africa, you'll have a long list. But
Absolutely.
like, yeah, yeah. But like, what has been one of your biggest like number one, the greatest benefit that you see, like this has been the most amazing thing about it.
Look, from my experience, we had a child here, and
Mm,
sure, the process was so smooth. Like, I don't want to
mm,
lie to you. And we were students, we're temporary permit holders, but the process
mm,
was so smooth. Like, if we had to do that in somewhere like Zim or South Africa, because I had friends who did that,
mm.
I would have had to break bank, like absolutely break bank with money that I don't have for the
So you're saying it's
quality.
smooth. You're
Yeah,
saying smooth
yeah,
because of
for the
cost wise.
everything, like quality, the level of help, the just
Mm,
everything. And if you had to put that in a cost basis and equal it in South Africa, basic for an example, right now obviously we use public hospitals, right? But if
mm,
I had to do that in a South African hospital, I don't think we would get the same quality and care that you'd get in like South Africa or Zimbabwe. Would have
mm,
to like maybe equate it with a private hospital with here
mm.
to just to get the similar
So
numbers
so
or
are you saying
similar help. Yeah,
so are you saying public hospitals there are just as good, if not better, than private hospitals
absolutely,
in South Africa?
absolutely,
Mm,
yeah, absolutely. And then when it comes to costs, it's not
mm,
even close, you know, because obviously in South Africa you have to have medical aid, and obviously that's a cost that you have to pay monthly. But here you don't you don't pay you don't pay much, if anything, you know.
mm, mm,
All the costs sit within your study permit fees.
mm,
So yeah, it's really amazing of how
mm.
smooth it is. Yeah, it's
So
shocking. Yeah,
okay, so of course, list of great things, quite long.
yeah,
Um, I'm sure there've been some things about Canada that you find not so great. I'm like, they're not worth like
yeah,
throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But
yeah.
what about living there has been not so great?
I think that's a hard question because I don't know if what I'm experiencing is because I'm in a small town, right? But
Mm,
basically, having stayed in South Africa for as long as I have, there are there's certain things, even like restaurants, that you get accustomed to. And
mm,
when you come here, those restaurants are not there anymore because you are in a, so to speak, smaller town. And Kelowna's not really that small. It's,
mm,
I wouldn't say it's like Witbank small, or you know what I
mm,
mean? Or you know what I mean? It's, I would compare it to like another town. Yeah, I'm
So
just
like
trying to look for it.
maybe I'm thinking of French Hook, maybe like one of those Cape
I've actually
Town.
never been to French Hook. Yeah,
Ah,
but it is similar because it is a tourist town. So you do get
mm,
the lakes, you do get like the boats, you do get like
mm,
the restaurants that tourists come and sit and have fun and stuff like that. But what I mean is that, like for example, when you look at South Africa, most of their restaurants are very European or Portuguese based in their
mm,
cuisine. not Portuguese, but just European based in their cuisine. But in Canada, they're not. It's mostly like American cuisines. You know what I mean? Like for example, you'll find more ribs and steaks houses than you do, those. I'm just trying to think of a
Like
European
fine
centric.
dining, like Greek, like I'm thinking of like
Yeah, like yeah,
Michael's.
exactly, like your Greek, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But here it's mostly like rib. Unless you go to the wineries, that's where you'll
Mm,
probably get a close feel to like the Mediterranean type of stuff. But
mm,
obviously in Joburg, it's not just at the wineries. It's at every, even a fast food as like European type of food, right? So
mm.
that's why I think that would be the hardest thing where you start to realize that, hey, okay, like just something basic like Nando's, right? Yeah.
Mm.
Do you
We
guys
have
have Nando's?
Nando's. We
Yeah,
have
exactly.
Nando's.
You have
And
Nando's.
it is
Yeah.
amazing. Anyway, we're going to talk about it.
So yeah, so
So,
you guys have Nando's, but we actually don't. We don't
mm,
have Nando's. So what we did have was, remember what is it? Pedro. What is it? Is it
Pedro's,
Pedro?
okay. Yeah,
I think
Pedro's.
so. So yeah, we used to have that, and it actually closed down because they were not getting any traffic. So it kind of
Jeez.
gives you an idea of what type of cuisine people here would much rather take. It's either you going like Indian-based foods or your American fast food joints, and then
So, are
yeah,
there
that's
any familiar things from that are were back in South Africa that are there now in Canada? I'm
there's
sure
quite
there's
a
the
lot. Yeah,
McDonald's, KFC's.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So you do get those ones, but I'm just picking those ones because those are the ones where my wife and I used to go to. So those are the things that actually I'm like,
Mm, that
that
makes
could
sense.
actually have helped the experience. But obviously, if I stayed in Vancouver, there's Nando's there in Vancouver everywhere. So yeah, I wouldn't be saying all of this. So you would have most of that stuff.
Mm,
But it's because I'm in a small town and
mm,
their vibe is not that. They prefer what they have had for this long.
yeah.
But yeah, a very nice fast food joint here is called
Mm,
A&W. A&W. It's really
mm.
their burgers are really nice. So I
Okay.
guess that's the
Okay.
compensation for it. Yeah, yeah,
I think one thing that I've noticed as well is you very quickly find substitutes or something that you
yeah.
enjoy,
Absolutely,
and you find something
absolutely.
that's similar, and you're like,
Yeah,
okay, this is not. It's actually
absolutely.
about the same thing. Okay,
Absolutely.
so
But the one thing that I actually need my Zoom community to help us with is Ceravita, dude. There's zero
is
Ceravita.
and you need that Serenita.
Dude, there is nothing. Like there's
So
no,
are they
and you'll
no?
find it in like the big towns. Like Vancouver will
Mm,
probably have some, but in no time the shelves are empty. You know what I mean? So it's
mm,
that
mm.
type of vibe. So
I was going to ask because like here we have like South African based shops, or even in
yeah,
Woolworths here we have like shelves that are for specific countries. So you have like a
yeah,
South African shelf that they sell South African specific food or whatever.
yeah.
Um, I'm guessing you being a smaller town that might not be available there.
Exactly. So we have to go as far as Vancouver to look for those
Mm.
towns and for those shops, and then bring the food here. So
Hey, road
that's
trip, bro.
that's probably that's probably the only downside to it, where
Mm, mm.
your palette of what you used to know, you probably need to like
You
switch
have
it
to
up
change.
and yeah, and just get
Okay.
used to the new stuff. Yeah.
So, from what you've been saying, you've had it's similar situation as myself, where your wife was the primary applicant of
Yeah.
you guys
The
moving to
move.
Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you came on and you were a spouse on like a work permit on that. So meaning that when you came there, you did not have a job. So the question is,
Nope.
How
Yeah.
difficult was it for you to secure work?
Surprisingly, this is probably one of the biggest pluses with Canada is
Mm,
how there's a vast number of jobs available here, especially if
mm,
you like have a degree. You will find work fair, not super easy, but you will find work. You know what I mean? And
mm,
it's even the odds are even higher when you move to these small towns, because these
mm,
small towns, most people leave these small towns for the big towns. I mean, you will find it a little bit harder if you go to like your Vancouver, your Ontario, your
mm,
Toronto. You know what I mean? Because obviously that's where everyone goes. And when you see on socials where people are, really frustrated with not finding jobs, it's because obviously there are multiple reasons, but the most main ones are that people don't have Canadian work experience, and
mm,
also people don't have they are competing with the highest of the highest. But
mm,
if you
mm.
come to these small towns and then you have your degree and you have the expertise, these guys are really willing to pick you up. And I mean, I was talking to you the other day where I was telling you on how frustrating it was, where 3 years ago, I would, when I was doing this research, I would be talking to you saying, like, what happened with accounting jobs? They're very low and stuff like that. But when you
Mm,
come to here, to small towns like this, the accounting jobs they're so in high demand. It's like
mm.
so shocking. You start to wonder, wait, who told us that like accounting jobs are not a thing anymore? Because in these
Okay.
small towns where they it's mostly mom and pop stores, they do need accountants. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they're looking to hire accountants and
Mm,
to run their stores. So when you do come to these small towns, the number of jobs that are available are actually
that's very
pretty
interesting.
they're pretty high.
So,
Yeah, they're
so you're
pretty high.
saying if someone is planning a move and they have the
Yeah.
option between big city and small town, they
Yeah.
should preferably opt for the small town. You get better. Um,
Yeah. I
mm,
would say like give it maybe a year or three, just being in a small town, build up your expertise, build up your knowledge of Canada as a place, and build up your experience as well. And then when you're
mm,
ready, you can move to any big town, because most of the times these big companies can actually move you to the big towns, and then you'll be able to uh, fit in. But just coming cold and landing in a big town and expecting you to land a big opportunity, it does it is hard. But when you
mm.
come to the small towns, in my experience, the opportunities are so much more. Because
Okay.
the job that I got currently, I think it was on the market for quite a long time, which
Mm,
just shows that like people were not willing to move to like a small town to actually take up the job.
mm,
And
mm.
yeah, I managed to get that, and I was able to start
Okay.
immediately. Yeah.
So, so with the career, the job that you have now, did you have to switch or move away from your expertise, or did you have you kind of stuck with your the same kind of job you had before?
So what I would say is that the level expertise that I had in South Africa was for a higher level job, but
Mm,
I had to just downgrade a little bit. But obviously, it's in my field of expertise, so it wasn't
mm.
like something north of what I did before.
Okay.
I have experience in what I'm currently doing now, and I had
Okay.
it in South Africa. I worked on it for a number of years, but it was just not like it was just not the level that you stay at. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm making sense, but
No, I hear you. I hear
yeah,
you.
exactly.
Like
Yeah.
you kind of had to go if you're a manager before. You kind of
Yeah,
had to go.
exactly. You had to downgrade a little bit. I'm not saying that I
Yeah,
became an intern. No, I'm not
yeah, yeah, of
saying
course.
that. Yeah, because
But you weren't.
currently at my place, I actually do some managing, which is
Mm,
not actually bad. So
mm.
yeah, it's not the worst job in the world. Yeah,
So
yeah,
I've heard this sentiment before from quite a number of people when they move, especially from Africa to here.
yeah,
They do end up with a lower job than they had before, but
yeah.
they don't mind because the pay is better than they were earning before. Has this been the same
Absolutely,
case?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's the same case. But obviously,
Mm.
with higher pay in your high income country, then it equals out. But
It equals out.
obviously, being a Dave Ramsey fan, you work your way through that type of
Mm,
you basically make sure that you're not spending higher than you're earning. You know what I mean? And
mm, mm, mm,
look, when you look at these countries,
mm,
they are somewhat built to sustain you, right?
mm.
And obviously, if you're reckless, then like in spending and stuff like that, it can get difficult for you because
Yeah,
obviously you're living above your means.
yeah.
But and what's funny is like I always call you and joke about this is that like in South Africa as an immigrant, it's
Mm,
so hard to get credit, right?
mm, mm.
But in Canada, as an immigrant, it's
Yeah,
so
throwing
easy
it
to
at
get
you.
credit.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
So if you're not like financially like savvy in your understanding, you will get to the place where you're in debt
Mm,
up to your
mm.
yeah. So that's basically how you need to navigate. Like
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
you will get um, enough finances to cover your lifestyle and everything, but it's
Okay,
just
okay.
obviously you just need to have a level head. I think I was
Mm,
speaking to my cousin where he's like, he said, I'm actually happy that you moving to Canada at the level of age that you are at because if you moved when you were like 20 or 21 and you arrived, you get a
now you
job,
did.
and the first thing that you do, you buy like a Mercedes or a Porsche, and you're balling out, you know what I mean, in
Yeah.
debt. You can actually do that, but
Mm,
you
mm.
just need to keep a level head and actually manage
Cool.
your work.
Yeah. So two things that people really look at when you can say your life has improved. So it's like your standard
Yeah.
of living either has stayed the same or gotten better, or your standard of saving has stayed the same or gotten better. Would you say that has improved in any way moving to Canada?
So it's hard to equate because currently I'm the breadwinner. So
Mm,
whereas in South Africa we were both working, so it was a two
mm,
income house. But the fact that I actually like I'm managing my wife and a child, you know what I mean? That should
mm,
just in itself show you how amazing this place
mm,
can
mm,
be if you put all your stuff together. But in South
mm,
Africa, I think I wouldn't be able to do that if I was solely working, and you know what I mean? Because like as an immigrant, your opportunities would get limited,
mm,
and you'd obviously need to finance everything from childbirth to
mm,
food
mm.
and all that other
Yeah.
stuff, medical bills. That would have been pretty much
Mm,
not impossible but difficult. But here it's yeah
it's
it's
manageable.
pretty straightforward. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Most of the what is this Healthcare is pretty straightforward, free for a
Um,
citizen, and yeah.
I'm laughing inside because you're like, yeah, if you're in my 20s, I'll be balling out in a nice car, and you're
Yeah,
driving a nice car now. But anyway,
exactly.
I'm not gonna,
No,
I'm
no.
not gonna,
No,
I'm not
I
gonna
did do it, but in my defense, right? I always talk to Blasio about this. In my defense, I did
yeah,
buy an electric vehicle,
yeah.
and oh man, it just makes financial sense. Like, I don't know what fuel is, man. Like
Oh,
I
you
literally
guys.
drive for free because
Uh,
I get to charge my car at the dealership, and it's free to charge your car at the dealership, and I get to
mm,
drive for free. And my EV has 390-kilometer range, so it's
so you
fantastic,
charge
man.
like
So
once a week.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I charge it once a
Mm,
week, and I get to enjoy. And maintenance and service is pretty low. And when I bought it, this country gives you, at the time they gave me credit for buying it.
mm,
Like they. So there's a lot. So when I do say like this country has upsides,
yeah,
it's
there are
it's
lots of
it's
them.
it's yeah, it's not just a feeling. You could actually list it down. There are quite a
Okay,
number of upsides. Yeah.
okay. Have you experienced any culture shock or homesickness? You and your wife.
No, no, not me. My wife, no, I don't think so. Maybe she did, but no, not from what I think. When I speak to my wife about this, the only
Mm,
thing that she says she does miss is
mm,
just the people, right?
mm,
Family and friends. But other
mm.
than that, yeah, we all love this place, and
That's good.
if we need any touch of South Africa, we just go on Twitter or YouTube and
Mm,
watch people do what they do, and then
mm.
oh, okay, we're back.
You
So
could,
yeah,
you could. Mm.
no homesickness from. Have you
How?
experienced homesickness?
Yeah,
You probably
somewhat,
have. I know. Yeah, I know
somewhat.
you
Yeah,
have.
really,
Yeah,
because
but what
far away.
exactly? Can you pinpoint what exactly it is that?
It's the people, no doubt. It's just,
Oh, is it? Okay,
yeah,
okay,
it's
got it,
people,
got
it's
it, got
people.
it.
Which
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
leads
I
to the next
mean,
question.
yeah.
My next question, like, how easy has it been to develop community there? Like, integrating with the people there and developing new community. How easy has been that? How easy has that been?
It's for us. It's for me personally, or actually for my wife. It's pretty easy. It's just, are you up to it? That's the question.
Mm,
When
mm,
you, I remember just having a conversation. No, I actually saw this on socials where people say the older you are, you just feel like it just feels, you feel lazy to connect with other people
to make new
and
friends, yeah.
yeah, make
Yep.
new friends. Yeah, the older you get. But if I really wanted to go all out, it's so easy. Like, for
Mm,
example, currently what I do is I play football on Sundays at the
mm,
park with a bunch of guys, and
mm,
yeah, we connect there. And church as well,
mm,
easy connection there. So
mm,
it's super easy to connect. It's just, are you willing to do it? Because I know people struggle with that. My wife connects with people from school when they're doing
mm,
assignments, get to meet new people, and now she has new friends through that. So it's pretty straightforward and easy. Yeah,
mm. That's good. That's good.
yeah,
Um, uh, so just looking now at, you already said that you would advise someone to come to Canada. You really love the experience.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
What what have been like in your process in getting there and living there? What are some mistakes that you've made just for the sake of other people not making similar mistakes?
I think it's just understanding the shifts in political
Mm,
spheres. You know what I mean? I mean, it's hard to foresee that Trump would move like this because in the first term he didn't. But just understanding that the immigration laws are highly dependent on stuff like that, it would have actually like made me plan a little bit better, you know. I'll probably maybe not have banked on my study stream as the what is this as the as the sole purpose for my move here. I probably would have like looked at other factors and how that works. But yeah, I think that is the biggest and the only thing. It's just understanding that political views or political changes actually affect the immigration laws. And because back in the day you knew that it did, but you just didn't know that it would be that effective, you know. You thought that it would be like maybe a change in 5%, but currently the change has been like higher than 50, you know, where it cuts down the numbers and all that other stuff. So yeah,
So,
so
so, mm,
that's my
so
that
knowing
would
what
be
you know
my
now, knowing what you
yeah.
know now, would
Yeah.
you have made the same move?
Absolutely, but just probably differently. Yeah.
Mm,
Maybe I would have done it. I would have moved with another pathway. I
okay.
mean, obviously, my wife would have still been doing her school, but I would have probably looked at other ways of actually achieving this, you know, so that, or maybe I would have looked at moving to New Zealand, yeah,
Yeah.
and picking that instead, because I would
Mm.
have understood that what if a monster comes into America and changes the rules, you know, you'd have been like,
There
okay,
was no
maybe
way of foretelling that, though.
maybe New Zealand would have been a better pick. But yeah, yeah, in hindsight, that's
So,
my take.
so recently in Canada there was an election, and
Yeah,
they were pretty much the same party that was there stayed there. But I'm
yeah,
assuming with the change in views, there have been, I guess, some changes in some laws and some how things work that side. Do you think? Do you think? Just looking at how there was the popular party that was supposed to win,
yeah,
what people are saying is because they saw the Trump effect, people got spooked, and then they
yeah,
didn't elect them in.
yeah.
Do you think that there has been some change in how politics are done that side, which could potentially affect negatively immigration going forward, or do you think that it's going to cool down?
Ah, that's a loaded question. So I think so.
It's just an opinion, you know. You're not. It's just
Yeah,
an opinion.
absolutely, absolutely. So if I look at the party that didn't come in, the question is, would they ever be successful to actually come back into power, and would they do it on the same ticket they were running on?
Mm,
It's really hard to tell that would be the case, because the whole Trump effect is not just something that like many people can forget. You know, it struck a really big nerve in Canada, and the effects will I foresee them actually continuing. But
mm,
where I think the tide will change when it comes to immigration, this is just my speculation, is that I think because Canada is somewhat separating from the union that they had with America,
mm,
there will be like a requirement for immigrants to fill certain positions. You know what I mean? Like, for
mm,
example, if I look at a company that used to just use the US base as their, what is this, as their hub to put all their products, you know, and ship them here, most of that changes now, you know? So you
Mm,
actually
mm,
need to have a hub in Canada and actually need to have people that actually work in Canada that actually can finance that. And then now you're looking at the government of Canada actually like looking at the economy and thinking, how best can we actually make this economy work? We can't actually just keep getting funds from, you know, the states and running operations like that. How do you run it
mm.
independently? All of that would need what is this? A
Workforce.
workforce. Yeah,
Mm,
exactly. And all of that will need people to actually buy into the economy and actually make it higher. So in the nut in just to summarize it, I think immigration will go up. It's just right now, I don't
mm,
think the Canadian government knows, or they have put their plans in the open to show what kind of country this is going to look like, or what kind of country it's going to. Because, for example, let's say they decide to join the Australia, New Zealand, UK union, right?
mhm,
Now it's a different country that needs to adhere to those rules, and the country changes in how it operates
mm.
in as a whole, you know. So it's hard to understand what's going to happen
Yeah.
in the next five, but immigration, in my opinion, is going to be needed. Yeah.
Do you think Canada can survive without immigrants?
I highly doubt that. Yeah, I highly doubt that. I think it's too much of a low population to not survive with immigrants. You know, so that's just my take. You
Sure,
definitely
sure.
do need immigrants for growth. You do need immigrants for, you know, for your workforce. It's not even a question.
Mm.
It's just a fact. You do, unless you're thinking of just changing the country completely into something else, you know, where you, yeah,
Yeah, look,
which
we
will
have seen
morph it into something that it's not. Yeah,
politicians run on these tickets, and
yep,
they're not looking at the economics of it, but they're just looking at public sentiment.
fact. Yeah,
Do you think that's a public sentiment Canada shares, or it's not part of Canada's ethos?
it's not part of Canada's ethos. I think Canada is really open to immigrants, and the election actually did show it a little bit. Obviously, most people would say the Trump ticket had a lot to do with it, but also also the rhetoric. Yeah, I would say it's definitely not. Yeah, yeah,
Very cool. So, just my last question. Your goals personally,
yeah,
being in a new culture, seeing how different people do things differently,
yeah.
has there been a shift in your goals or how you view life in general from how you viewed it before?
Yeah, very, very much, you know, because it's funny when we're talking about the political scene, right? I used to
Mm,
be super right wing when I was in South Africa, but
mm,
now I'm more, you know, like open to the idea of understanding both sides, you know.
mm,
And sometimes it does make me very centrist in my thinking, where I'm like, yeah, I understand that point. I also understand that point. So I think my outlook when it comes to politics has actually changed. And then when you actually see like a functioning system where the checks and balances are actually working for the people, and you actually see results of it. Yeah, I mean, look. I could be the only one saying most of the stuff in Canada. Maybe some people don't feel that way, but
Mm.
from my experience and from what I've seen in other countries, I think this is I think this is fine. You know what I mean? Like maybe my standards are low, but dude, it's pretty solid. You know, like
Do you think Africa? Do you think Africa can ever get
yeah.
there?
Go ahead.
Do you think Africa can ever get there?
Absolutely, it's just obviously a matter of time, but I'm not going to say in the next 10 years or anything like that. We still most people will say that we love strong men, you know, like
Mm.
we idolize people like Trump, you know, and it's hard to argue against when most of my
Mm.
friends that I know are, are secret pro-Trumpers, right? Most of them,
Mm.
like especially
Mm.
when the ones in Africa that I'm speaking of. So
Mm.
it's hard to say that's the case, but I don't think that's the case. I think what the case is that like maybe just the level of education. Maybe that's the thing. Yeah,
Mm.
maybe
Mm.
the level of
Mm.
education, as long as when the level of education increases, we'll be able to make decisions that are actually beneficial to us instead of to just run with a rhetoric. You know what I mean? For
Yeah.
example, like if we look at the American public, right?
Mm.
They voted for Trump in, right? But then when
Mm.
Trump comes in, he cuts taxes for the
The rich
wealthy,
people.
right? And the people that voted for him are not the wealthiest. So
Mm.
it kind of like defeats their vote, you know? So that's what
Mm.
I think is happening in Africa, where like we are voting against our intentions in the name of liberation. But when we look at whatever the liberation these people are talking about, it's not the liberation that benefits us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are
You get where I'm
still.
coming from?
The politicians are screaming liberation, but the people are still captive.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not that we don't understand what the word liberation means. We do understand it. It's just we don't understand. I mean, the vast of the voters don't understand what is entailed in that liberation. For
Mm.
example, yeah.
Mm.
Because if you're trying to liberate me from poverty, you need to tell me how you're going to do it. You can't just say, we're just going to do it. You
You're
need to
gonna do
tell
it.
me how you're going to do it. And
Vote
you
for me, and
need
I'll
to
show
show,
you.
exactly. You can't just, so you need to show me like proof of doing it. And then I can
Mm.
say, okay, this guy knows what he's doing and he's going to do
Mm.
it. So I think it's just a matter of time where the voter base in Africa starts getting that. And then we'll be able to like start voting for people who actually like change it. But that's not obviously the whole of Africa. There's a lot of other things that are involved, like
Mm. Mm.
armies and stuff like that. So it's hard to equate. But yeah.
Yeah. Very cool, man. Very cool, man. Any last thoughts to someone who's listening and they're thinking about the big move to Canada? What would you say is your overarching advice to them and their family about doing what you did?
Yeah, it's going to feel new, and I wouldn't, don't be afraid, you know. It's a very good journey, and you are coming to a very good country. And yeah, and when you don't second guess your decision,
Mm. Mm.
because that happens a lot when you do immigration. I remember when I moved to South Africa, and the first few years, I'm like,
What
should
am
I
I
just
doing?
go back? Exactly. So don't second guess your decision. It is a good decision. You just need to stick to it and then run with it. And yeah, you'll be able to get the right results. It's just obviously you need to just stick to that and build on that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tawana. Appreciate your time. I think people find this conversation very helpful. We just say again, we're not immigration consultants, so please do seek out proper advice. Go to Canada.ca if you want to read up about the different pathways to get into Canada. We just wanted to share our experience. Hopefully, it might help you to continue and dig in and find what works best for you. But thanks for listening in. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share for more content. Until next time, this is What Takes with Blaze. Peace out.